As some of you may know, I'm working on a book. It's going to be Innkeeper's Guide to the Sorcerer. I'm compiling all of the information in all of my videos into one book. So far, it's looking to be about 300 pages long. As I get closer to the release date, I'll give you guys more information. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a taste of some of the things that you're not going to see in my videos that will be in the book. I'm going to have random charts, random tables, as well as a different sorcerer build for each subclass available officially for the sorcerer. These are all going to be single class builds that you can use from level 1 through level 20, and they're going to be fun from level 1 through level 20. So each one has been carefully curated and play tested at different points in the class, and so far all of them have been really fun. Today I want to present one of those classes kind of as a teaser as to what you can expect from the book. This one is going to be called the War Shaman. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your Innkeeper, and today we will be building a single class Divine Soul Sorcerer. This character is a specialist in buffing party members and healing those that are hurt in the front lines. It can also hit really hard against a single foe, but only a few times per day, so it's not meant to be a damaging build, more of a party support and healing build. Therefore, its main roles are going to be buffing and healing, and it's going to work best in a party with a lot of melee combatants who are in the front lines taking a lot of hits so that you're constantly being able to heal them. Feel free to make any changes to this build as you please. Some campaigns will offer third-party spells that I may not have available with these builds. Mostly I'm building these subclasses with just official material in mind. So if you have something better that you want to add, or if you have some things you want to remove, feel free to do so. But this subclass will work well the way it's built from level 1 through level 20. What I envisioned for this character specifically is an Orcish Shaman. Now you can flavor it however you want, make it a different, completely different type of character. But the way I envisioned it when I built it is this is an orc who is a shaman for her tribe and uses her shamanic magic to bolster her allies during times of conflict. She also heals the front line from afar to keep them fighting and intimidate the enemy, who's going to feel like they're facing an unkillable foe because they're going to keep hitting your frontliners, and those frontliners are not going to go down. They also raise the dead to pit the fallen front lines of the enemy against their own allies in sort of horrific flipping of the script that will definitely have the enemy turning away in fear. Now, if all else fails, she can summon a messenger from Gruumsh, the evil god of orcs, or in your campaign, whatever god orcs worship, and that can help turn the tide in later levels. The Divine Soul Sorcerer is one of the most difficult subclasses to grasp for new players. In my opinion, it is probably the most complex subclass in the entire game of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. This particular character aims to use the available cleric spells in a way that's mostly going to impact the combat. This character is sometimes going to outshine the party cleric in terms of its healing potential, but it is mostly meant to be support. It's also kind of inclined to self-sacrifice. A lot of orc tribes value power and toughness, and the shamans are there to support those orcs who are bigger and tougher that can take down the enemies, even to their own detriment. And this particular character will be doing just that. And the idea of this character is to empower your allies with some buffs and heal them as they're injured. You can also help with some damage dealing using your familiar to cast inflict wounds through them from a range. If you like a support type of role, then this is going to be a really fun character for you. When you create this character, you're going to choose the orc race. Do not choose half orc. Half orc gives you a benefit when you crit hit with a weapon. Because we're not going to be using weapons, we're going to lose that benefit. So instead, go with the orc from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes if you have access to that. This orc will give you still the same ability. If you're dropped to 0, you drop to 1 instead. That's going to come in really handy later on. But also you get a bonus action dash, which is going to help keep you safe, and it's also going to help you stay in the back of the melee, really far away from the frontliners, and be able to dash if someone goes down or is injured. You can dash to get to them more quickly and be able to heal them. So I think that ability works much better than the half-orc abilities. For your Sorcerer's Origin, since you get to pick one at level 1, we're going to go with Divine Soul. Once you pick the Divine Soul Sorcerer, you have another option. You have to pick your Divine Magic source. We're going to choose Evil. We're doing this because Gruumsh is an evil god. and that is the source of your divine power. So it fits the theme. Choose a different one if you want, but for this particular build, that's what we're going to go with. It doesn't mean that your character has to be evil. It just means that the source of their power came from an evil source. And this is going to grant you Inflict Wounds as a free bonus spell. Inflict Wounds is a spell that we're definitely going to be using throughout our entire adventuring career as our main form of damage, should we ever have to resort to dealing damage to an individual foe. For your ability scores, focus on your Constitution first, then your Charisma, and then your Dexterity. You're going to be taking damage, and a lot of it is going to be self-inflicted, so you're going to need all of the hit points that you can get. Your Charisma is not going to need to be maxed out as early as possible, since most of your spellcasting is not going to be requiring attack rolls or saving throws. Plus, with Favored by the Gods, you can kind of make up that difference in case you really need to get a hit in. You roll an attack roll with Inflict Wounds, your Charisma is not the greatest, no worries. Use your Favored by the Gods to make that roll a little bit higher and ensure that it hits. Make sure that you make your Wisdom at least a 13. This is extremely important. You have to have a 13 Wisdom as well in order to get the Ritual Caster feat. So as you can see, this build is a little bit dependent on multiple ability scores being somewhat high. Your Dexterity is not as important, so don't worry too much if your armor class isn't super great. It's okay. You're not going to be in the front lines, so you shouldn't have to worry about too many attacks coming at you. But your Wisdom of 13 is very important. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get a feat that you want to get early in the game. For cantrips, go ahead and select Firebolt, Guidance, and Light, as well as Spare the Dying. Your damage output at low levels is mostly going to consist of Firebolt. Guidance and Light will provide a very nice out-of-combat buff, and Spare the Dying is going to help you keep your allies alive in the lower levels. For your first level spells, we're going to pick Bless and Shield. Since you really can't heal anyone just yet, go ahead and use Spare the Dying on your allies that take too much damage in the early levels. If your group needs help taking down a big foe, use Inflict Wounds to deal some serious damage. Use Shield to stay alive in case that you're attacked by, enemies that rush towards you in the back or something. In the early levels, you're mostly going to want to stay away from combat and just try to maintain Bless so that your allies can be at their best. Your best function is out of combat, mostly because you can help with skill checks with Guidance, but don't forget your bonus action dash. This is going to be a great defensive option for you. At lower levels, a lot of creatures aren't going to move faster than 30 or 35 feet, so that bonus action dash will really help you get away from danger if you need to. Once you get to level 2, you get some sorcery points, but you can only use them to cast an extra first level spell. That's perfectly fine because you're going to be wanting to cast a lot of spells. You also get to learn another first level spell, so go ahead and pick Cure Wounds so that now you can start healing your allies. This is going to keep them going strong and healthy and confident and will help you quite a bit at level 2. Once you hit level 3, you're going to get a pick of 2 metamagic options. In this case, we're going to pick Extended Spell and Twin Spell. You also get to pick a second level spell. We're going to go with Aid. This is where your character's really going to start to shine. With Extended Spell, you can cast Aid before a long rest and boost the maximum hit points of your party members, specifically the front line, for the entire adventuring day without using any resources. Basically how this works, you're going to cast Aid right before the long rest and use Extended Spell so that instead of 8 hours, you're going to double it to 16 hours. You take your 8-hour rest, you still have 8 more hours of the spell working, and it's not a concentration spell. So you wake up in the morning, everyone that you cast Aid on is going to have the additional bonus hit points for 8 hours, which will more than likely be the entire adventuring day. And because you just took a long rest, you refreshed all your spell slots and all your sorcery points, which means that you'll have all of your resources available for the adventuring day. During combat, what you're going to do is you're going to upcast Cure Wounds and use Twin Spell to double the effectiveness of the spell, or you can cast it at first level and then twin it so that you can get 2 allies and only spend 1 sorcery point to get 2 allies healed. In a pinch, you can use your second level spell slots to cast Inflict Wounds on enemies. And upcast Inflict Wounds as a second level spell is going to be dealing 4d10 damage on a hit. And if you really need to make sure that hits, use Favored by the Gods in order to ensure that it does. 4d10 is no joke at 3rd level, so you'll be able to help your frontliners take down pretty much any boss by dealing a ton of damage. At level 4, you get an ability score improvement. go ahead and pick a feat instead. This might be a little controversial, but there's a reason for it. You're still not casting enough damaging spells to justify maximizing your charisma as soon as possible yet, and a feat is going to help tremendously. Go ahead and pick Ritual Caster Wizard, and for your spells, pick Find Familiar and Unseen Servant. Both of these are very good utility spells, and you're going to need Find Familiar at later levels because you're not going to want to be in the front lines to cast Inflict Wounds if you're trying to do damage. Instead, you're going to use your Familiar. Stay in the back lines. You're going to send your Familiar out to your allies that are downed, and any touch spell can be delivered through your Familiar. So, Cure Wounds being a touch spell, your Familiar can go up to the front lines and heal the downed barbarian, and you're still safe at a distance. Or if you need to hurt a creature like a boss or whatever and cast Inflict Wounds, that is also a touch spell. So your Familiar is going to be able to deliver that damaging spell for you while you stay safe in the back lines. Now at this level, you also get another cantrip. I recommend that you choose Mind Sliver. You're probably not going to use it very much. Your charisma is probably going to be lower than the average sorcerer at this level. So Mind Sliver is going to help a lot of those saving throw spells to land if you need to cast one on an enemy. Probably won't need it just yet, but it's good to have that spell as a backup in case you want to ensure that something lands. Also at this level, you get another spell. I would choose Enhance Ability. This will greatly improve your out-of-combat effectiveness, and you can be a real asset to your allies at mid-levels with that spell. It's going to be extremely helpful. Enhance Ability is a great spell, and I think a lot of people kind of bypass it. For a sorcerer, generally, I don't think it's a good pick, but in this particular build, I think it is a great pick. At 5th level, you get to pick a 3rd level spell. I recommend Animate Dead. You're going to want to harvest some corpses early on so that you have 2 minions that can do your bidding. Your zombies are going to serve many purposes, including setting off traps, exploring ahead of the group, and delivering potions to people. They're also going to serve as shields for you by grappling foes and that kind of stuff. In your earlier levels, you got the Find Familiar spell and Unseen Servant spell. Unseen Servant is an awesome spell because you can use the Unseen Servant to deliver potions to your downed allies. So while your Familiar is casting Cure Wounds on your behalf, your Unseen Servant is delivering potions to downed allies. Because it is a full humanoid creature, it can open bottles, it can deliver the bottles to enemy or to allies and whatnot. So now with Animate Dead, you not only have your Unseen Servant that's delivering potions, but you have your zombies that can deliver potions to your allies as well. Plus, your zombies, you can use Enhanced Ability on them and give them a bonus when they try their grappling checks. So with Enhanced Ability on a zombie, they are far more likely to continue grappling any enemy that's trying to get close to you, or maybe if an ally wants to pin someone down, have your zombie pin them down for your ally, or your ally bashes them over the head. Some really cool strategies that you can use with Enhance Ability and your zombies. Make sure you take full advantage of them. At 5th level, your only 3rd level spell is going to be Animate Dead, so take full advantage of it. As a sorcerer, you don't usually get to have fun with that spell, and I think it's a great spell. And of course, don't forget, you have twin spells, so you can always twin Enhanced Ability to make both of your zombies have some additional bonuses to grappling and grabbing enemies. And during boss fights, we're going to continue with the same tried and true strategy. Send your Familiar out, upcast Inflict Wounds if needed. Now as a 3rd level spell, it's going to be doing 5d10 points of damage, and you can always upcast it to 2nd level, doing 4d10, so you have a few options there as well. At level 6, you get Empowered Healing, which is a pretty mediocre ability, but you also get an additional spell. For your additional spell, go ahead and pick Life Transference. This spell is going to provide an insane amount of value and healing to your group. I would totally check with your Dungeon Master, though, on how they want to handle Twin Spell with Life Transference, because this is going to be important for this character. Some DMs will let you Life Transference, take the damage one time, twin it, and heal the damage to 2 creatures. Some Dungeon Masters will say, well, if you twin it, you're going to take the damage twice and then heal 2 creatures. So be careful if that's what they want to do. It's going to be brutal for you. You're going to take quite a bit of damage if your DM rules it that way. So before you try twinning the spell, talk with your Dungeon Master, make sure you know how they want to handle it. Sometimes it may be worth it to take the double damage because the healing for the spell is a lot. And so if you have allies that are badly wounded, this can turn the tide of the battle if you twin it. And you can take the damage and sacrifice yourself. It's not a big deal. You're an orc, so therefore if you drop to 0 on the single instance of damage, you're going to drop to 1. So you'll still be alive, and your allies are going to be pretty well healed after that. And of course, later on, what we're going to do is combine life transference with the Orcish ability as well as Death Ward. So you're going to be able to do that a couple of times in an adventuring day, where you drop down to 0, but you don't die. You drop to 1 instead because of your Orcish ability. And then you do it again with Death Ward. So it's going to be pretty cool later on, the amount of healing that you're going to be able to do for your allies. And speaking of which, at level 7 is when you get your 4th level spell slot. So why not pick Death Ward now? Use Death Ward before your long rest, and then use your extended spell so that it'll extend it. The same thing that we were doing with Aid, we're going to do with Death Ward. So you're going to refresh all of your resources at the beginning of the adventuring day. You won't be missing any spell slots or sorcery points, but you will be Death Warded. And you can do this to several allies. As you get to later levels, you'll eventually be able to have an entire party of Death Warded allies every single adventuring day, which is going to make your allies nearly unkillable as it is, which is fantastic. It'll be so much fun. And of course, because you now have a 4th level slot, when you fight a boss, if you wanted to do a tremendous amount of damage, you can now upcast your inflict wounds and deal 6d10 points of damage on a hit. And heck, if you really wanted to, and if you have 2 creatures next to you, then you can twin spell inflict wounds and deal 6d10 damage to 2 creatures. Pretty awesome maneuver there. At level 8, we get another ability score increase. So at this point, we will start boosting our ability scores. We're going to boost our charisma score this time. As we get to higher level spells, we're going to need charisma bonuses in order to keep landing hits, and our difficulty rating values against enemies need to be boosted a little bit because we're going to be a little bit behind already as it is. Now for our spell this level, we're going to choose Tasha's Mind Whip. This is going to allow us to be a little bit more relevant in combat without having to waste such a high resource of upcasting inflict wounds. With Tasha's Mind Whip being a 2nd level spell, it's effective as a 2nd level spell, and you can twin it for 2 sorcery points, or you can upcast it to a 3rd level spell and hit 2 creatures, whichever one you think is going to be more beneficial. Honestly, twinning it is a little bit more cost efficient, because if you convert a 3rd level spell into sorcery points, that's 3 sorcery points, and it only costs 2 to twin a 2nd level Tasha's Mind Whip. So take note of that. At 9th level, we get a 5th level spell. We're going to go with Summon Celestial. Summoning spells are amazing, and they're very rare for sorcerers, so it's really cool that we get to have another one. Our zombies are great, but they're not exactly as good as summons. They do offer a lot of utility, but not so much benefits for combat. Summon Celestial fixes that. And not only does it deal relevant damage in combat, but it also has a healing element, so you can keep healing your allies as well in the middle of a combat. And that Summon Celestial can tank quite a large amount of hits, so that's another added benefit. It can tank some damage for you or your allies, allowing or draw attacks from them, which will allow your allies to stay alive even longer. So strategically, here's what I think you should be doing with this spell. Of course, some campaigns may work a little bit differently, but for I think the average campaign, or if you're playing a book campaign, generally there'll be a few shorter battles before getting to a boss in most occasions. So what I would recommend is use this spell at the early stages of the adventuring day. That way you can preserve as many resources as possible for later portions of the dungeon or adventure. So you summon the Celestial, you go through the early stages of the dungeon, fighting the weaker enemies, keeping your allies healed without using any additional resources because your Celestial has that healing element, and it's going to be taking hits for your allies from those minions. So it's going to preserve the resources of the rest of your party members just by you having that Celestial on the board. Then when you get to the boss, your party's going to be far more refreshed and have a lot more resources available in order to complete that boss fight. When you cast this spell, I recommend that you almost always choose the Avenger option because it has a great ranged attack and can stick close to your allies in case that they need healing. The only time that I recommend the Defender is if you need something to take the hits for your allies far more than dealing damage to enemies. At this level, I also think it's a good time to swap out the Bless spell. You have a few more concentration spells that you're going to be using, so you won't have the room for keeping Bless up, unfortunately. So especially since you're going to have that Summon spell. I think Dispel Magic is a good option here because Dispel Magic provides both a defensive and an offensive boost. So it's a buff and a debuff. If enemies are causing some kind of weird effect on your allies, hold person, that kind of stuff, you can dispel magic. And again, if your enemies are boosting themselves with spells, you can dispel magic there as well. It also serves utility. If there's magical traps or a locked door that's magically locked, you can always dispel magic as well. So I think it's a very versatile spell and a great replacement for Bless. At 10th level, you get another meta magic option. And here I recommend Distance Spell. A lot of cleric healing spells require touch, so being able to change that to 30 feet is very handy. Of course, you have your familiar that's already been delivering spells without you needing to spend sorcery points, but sometimes familiars get killed, or sometimes you need to have your familiar in one place and you need to cast a healing spell somewhere else while still staying far away from both. Then this will give you the option to do that. You also get to learn another spell at this level. I will pick Greater Restoration. At this level and beyond, you're going to be encountering creatures that are going to cause some additional effects like fear, charm, or level drain, life drain, that kind of stuff. Greater Restoration is really going to help here, and especially in times when the effect is not magical. So Dispel Magic may not work. In this case, if it doesn't, then you can use Greater Restoration instead. At 10th level, you also get a cantrip. So we're going to go with Thaumaturgy. It's mostly a role-playing cantrip, but it's going to be handy in social interaction. I think you have all the cantrips that you're going to need for your character, so Thaumaturgy is a decent pick. At level 11, you get to learn a 6th level spell. I highly recommend Hero's Feast. It's going to give some amazing benefits to your allies. They last for 24 hours, which is fantastic because you can take a long rest and still have all the benefits and get all your resources back. The drawback is it's a little bit expensive, so you're going to have some gold in order to cast it. So you're probably not going to be able to cast it every single adventuring day, but on important missions, I think this spell is going to come in handy tremendously. And on missions where you don't get to cast it, at least you have your 6th level spell slot to upcast other stuff like aid before a long rest or something like that. Now, with your extended spell on aid and death ward, you're already going to have allies that are going to be really hard to kill. Once you add Hero's Feast, you're going to be giving your party some major boosts before the long rest, and then freeing up a lot of slots for casting healing spells and continue to use Inflict Wounds and Tasha's Mind Whip and whatnot. And you can still use your familiar to deliver the Inflict Wounds from range. Now, Hero's Feast is going to grant additional hit points, and my DM allows it to stack with aid. I think by raw, it should be able to be stacked with aid. Check with your Dungeon Master. Some Dungeon Masters don't allow it to stack, so boosting your hero's maximum hit points twice may be something that your Dungeon Master doesn't allow, and that's totally fine if they don't. If that's the case, Hero's Feast is still a really good spell to cast, so don't even worry about it. And if you cast it, your DM doesn't allow it to stack with aid, then don't cast aid, and that's it. Replace the spell with something else once you get Hero's Feast. At level 12, you really don't get anything except for the ability score increase. In order for it to make the most impact, what we're going to do is do something a little controversial here. We're going to take the feat Tough. So we're not going to opt for an ability score increase. Instead, we're going to boost our hit points by 2 per level, which is going to be a huge boost to our hit point. In this case, it's going to give us 24 additional hit points to the character. That's huge. And it's important because we're going to be using this life transference trick several times in the adventuring day at this level. So we're going to be taking a lot of damage from ourselves and from enemies. So having those extra 24 hit points is going to make a huge impact. At level 13, you get a 7th level spell. I recommend Conjure Celestial. I've said many times that summoning spells are very useful, and Conjure Celestial is more than just useful. It's one of the best summon spells, in my opinion, in the entire game. If your Dungeon Master allows you to choose, I'd go for the Coatl. If they don't let you choose, the spell becomes a little bit less important, but it's still a good spell to pick for 7th level. If they let you choose which Celestial, always go for the Coatl. This Celestial has a bunch of spells that it can cast, which is going to greatly boost your resources for the adventuring day. The Coatl can cast Detect Evil, or Detect Evil and Good, Detect Magic, Detect Thoughts at will, as many times as it wants. And that's already fantastic. But even better than that, it gets a bunch of spells that it can do 3 times per day. So the spells are all pretty handy. Bless, we got rid of Bless just a couple levels ago. we got it back, and we don't have to concentrate on it because our Quaddle is going to concentrate on Bless for the party. It also can create food and water, which is probably going to be important. Cure Wounds, you get 3 times per day use of Cure Wounds at level 1, sure, but it can come in handy, and that's three spells that you're not going to use up, or sorcery points you're not going to use up. Lesser Restoration is going to be fantastic at this higher level. Protection from poison, not as important, and then it can cast Shield on itself to keep itself safe. It can also cast Dream, Greater Restoration, and Scrying once per day. The Greater Restoration is going to be huge. Already that's a great spell. Even better that you can cast it an additional time per day by having the Quaddle out. And if you really think about it, the Quaddle, the list that I gave you, that's a lot of spells that are going to be added to your number of spells you can cast per day, because your Quaddle is going to be casting them. That's 3 times per day Cure Wounds, 3 times per day Bless, 3 times per day Lesser Restoration. That already is 9 extra spell slots, and you still get Greater Restoration and then a bunch of spells that you can cast unlimited amount of times. It is just amazing. Now, because of the nature of the spells that the Summoned Celestial can cast, I recommend casting this spell after you do a few combat. So unlike the other spell, Summon Celestial, that one you want to cast early in your adventuring day. Let's say you go through 2 combats, then at that point go ahead and summon your Quaddle, because in the early battles you're not going to need spells like Greater Restoration and maybe Bless, but Cure Wounds you won't need, that kind of thing. So save it. Cast your other Celestial first. Have it tank damage and do its own healing and deal damage to lower level enemies. Then, when you're partway through the dungeon, summon your Quaddle, so then you can have the benefit of those additional spells. Keeping with this strategy is going to keep your resources up, so that when you get to the really important and tougher battles throughout the adventuring day, you will have the most available resources to support your party with. And don't forget the other strategies that you've been using at lower levels. They're still going to apply at the higher levels. Inflict wounds through your familiar, Animate Dead, having your zombies grapple enemies and tank damage for you and your allies, and using enhanced abilities so that they can ensure that they grapple things, and of course using life transference to keep your allies up and healed. At level 14, just like with level 12, you don't get to learn a new spell, but you do get the Wings ability. These are going to allow you to fly without needing any concentration, which already is tremendous. And you can heal from midair now, which is going to be awesome, because now you're going to be even less likely to take damage. And you can use distance spell to keep a distance from enemies. It's like you're kind of the guardian angel now of your party, flying above your party and healing them when necessary. At 15th level, you get an 8th level spell. If you've seen my 8th level sorcerer spells video, you know that there aren't that many good 8th level spells for sorcerers. There also aren't that many good 8th level spells for clerics either. And I think generally upcasting lower level spells are going to work better for your 8th level slots than learning an 8th level spell. So I think it's a good choice here to pick up a 5th level spell instead. We're going to go with Mass Cure Wounds, because that'll heal multiple party members. Taking another lower level spell gives you versatility, because you have more spell slots for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th that you can use Mass Cure Wounds with. So in a way, it kind of works better than picking an 8th level spell that you're only going to be able to cast with an 8th level spell slot. And this spell can be upcast to 8th level and heal 6d8 plus 4 to each, up to 6 creatures, which is a lot of healing. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of healing. I think the average of that is going to be like 28 points of damage to 6 party members. So that's going to be over 120 points of damage healed with 1 spell slot. It is an 8th level spell slot, but still, that's a lot of healing. Oh, here's the math. So the spell can heal an average of 31 points to each creature for a total of 186 average points of damage if you can heal 6 total creatures with it. That's pretty awesome. So alternatively, if you don't need to heal that many people, you can use your 8th level spell slot to upcast Inflict Wounds and deal a massive 10d10 points of damage, with the potential to crit with it for double the amount of damage, 20d10 points of damage. That is an insane amount of damage. Or if you don't want to do that, you can even upcast your Summoned Celestial for a boosted creature that gets 4 attacks per round and can heal your allies between combats. The point is here, keeping this spell slot empty actually opens up a lot of different options for you, depending on the situation, as opposed to having an 8th level spell that you wanted to use every adventuring day, and you're going to feel bad not casting it because you had to upcast something else. In this case, there is none of that feeling. You literally have an empty high level slot that you can use for multiple different things depending on your needs. At level 16, you get another ability score improvement. Go ahead and take the feat Inspiring Leader. At this level, this feat is going to allow you to add about 20 extra hit points to your allies, and it does stack with aid. And so you're going to get some massive boost to your party survivability here. If you cast Hero's Feast, if you cast aid, and if you do your Inspiring Leader, that's already, who knows, 30, 40, 50 extra hit points to every single party member. That's a lot of extra damage that enemies are going to have to do to down your party. That's really, really good. And other than that, keep using the same tactics you've been using. They've been working, and continue doing them. At level 17, you learn another meta magic option. Go with Quicken Spell in this case. The meta magic is going to allow you to cast leveled spells and still use Spare the Dying if you need to. You can also use it to make some tactical maneuvers while healing, such as quickening a heal and using your action to dodge, that kind of stuff. I'm going to be honest, you're probably not going to be using Quicken Spell at this level. It's going to be very, very rare when you're going to need to. You already have a few things that you can do with your bonus action, including your bonus action dash. Main reason why we didn't take Quicken Spell earlier in the game, because you already have something to do with a bonus action that's going to be pretty efficient. So no need to really use it, but if you need it, it's going to be there. You also get to learn a 9th level spell at this level. Go ahead and go for Mass Heal. This one gets you 700 hit points that you can distribute however you want. I love the ability to distribute the 700 so that it's not evenly distributed. The spells that do, healing to several creatures like Mass Cure Wounds, it's nice, but most of the time, there's 1 or 2 party members that took a ton of damage, and the rest of the party members took a little bit of damage. So distributing healing evenly is not always going to be the most beneficial thing for your party. With Mass Heal, you can heal the Barbarian and the Paladin who are up front taking the most damage. You can heal them 300 hit points total, and then distribute the rest amongst everybody else. It probably goes without saying, but at this point, your party is going to be nearly unkillable, I think. It's really, really a fun build if you like that kind of thing where people just keep hitting your group and they just keep on going. I think it's really fun. At level 18, you get the Unearthly Recovery ability. The best part about this ability is that you can use it after using the Life Transference combo and remain healthy after providing some massive healing to allies once you've run low on your higher level spell slots. You don't get to learn any new spells at level 18, 19, or 20, so your spell list is kind of set in stone at this point, unless your campaign specifically asks for a different type of spell, in which case go ahead and switch some out. At level 19, you get another ability score improvement. This time, I would say increase an ability score. If your charisma is not at 20 yet, go ahead and increase that score. If not, go ahead and increase your constitution score, which will boost your hit points a little bit higher. At this point, I think you're probably going to have over 150 hit points, maybe even 180 hit points. That is really, really good for a spellcaster. Wizard at this level is probably going to have like 110 or 120 hit points if they're lucky. So you're going to be extremely buffed out in terms of your ability to tank hits, and that is by design, and it's going to help you continue doing what you're doing and continue to help keep the rest of your party safe. And then the final level, level 20, you get the Laughably Bad Sorcerer's Restoration feature. It's really, really a terrible feature, but whatever, I'll take extra sorcery points if they're giving them out. It's 4 extra sorcery points on a short rest. Really nothing else that you can say here, but the final 2 levels of a sorcerer aren't really very exciting. If you want, go ahead and multi-class after level 18 if you want. Most campaigns aren't really going to get this far anyway, so it's not a big deal. But level 19 and 20 are not super great. In fact, if you wanted to multi-class, I probably would recommend that if that's something that you like to do. Maybe go with Fighter, and then take 2 levels of Fighter, and then you can Action Surge and actually get something really cool at those final levels. An extra spell casting in a round. That wouldn't be too bad. And maybe even be able to wear some medium armor because you'll get that proficiency by going to Fighter. So I think that's an option. I'm not a multi-classer, but I never played to level 20 anyways. And this concludes the War Shaman. Shaman. I know some of you are like screaming earlier when I called it a shaman. Some of you say shaman. I don't know. I always use the two interchangeably. It doesn't bother me either way. But if it bothers you, close your ears when I say shaman or close your ears when I say shaman. It is what it is. Anyways, I really like the theme of a tribal healer who beats on drums, and kind of rouses the party up and chants war cries to bolster their allies during battle. I think that's a really cool concept, and I love that this character can make your party so much better at surviving, and it can dish out some pretty good damage. Yeah, just a few times per day, but it can dish out the damage if it needs to. It's kind of like having that ace in your back pocket, I think this type of character is going to appeal to a player who prefers a support role or prefers role-playing, but that's not to say that it's a weak build, not by any means. This is a very powerful build, but its power comes from keeping your allies safe and keeping your allies going strong, even after times where they really shouldn't be going strong. So there are many other ways to build the Divine Soul Sorcerer, and I thought this was kind of a unique take on it, and I hope that you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. And check out the other builds that I'm going to have in the book. They're all going to be unique like this. Just to kind of give you a hint of some of the things, I have a build that I've already built called Fury of the Fairy Dragon, which is going to be a Draconic Sorcerer build. And I do have a couple of other cool ones in there. So I'm really excited to show them to you guys. Once they're out, I will let you know. I hope that this video was helpful. If you have any other questions or comments, be sure to leave them
down there
in the comments down below. As always, I'm your Innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then. An Orc Shaman. So this is a shaman, whatever you want to call it. At 9th level spell, we get